Few cars in history manage to look like a Ferrari, drive like a Corvette, and yet be rarer than both. The Iso Grifo Series II by Bertone is one of those mythical machines, a grand tourer born from Italian elegance and American muscle, a car so rare that collectors today treat it like a unicorn of the classic car world. When you first lay eyes on the Iso Grifo Series II by Bertone, it's easy to mistake it for a Ferrari or a Maserati. The long hood, the muscular stance, the proportions that only an Italian design studio could sculpt. But behind that gorgeous exterior lies a story unlike any other in the automotive world. The story of how a small company from Bresso, Italy, dared to take on the giants of Maranello and Modena, and in the process, created one of the most fascinating grand tours of all time. The Iso brand wasn't born in the world of exotic cars. In fact, Renzo Rivolta, the company's founder, made his fortune building refrigerators and scooters after World War II. But Rivolta had bigger dreams. He wanted Iso to be a player in the luxury performance market, not just another automaker, but a brand that could stand toe-to-toe with Ferrari, Maserati, and Lamborghini. His philosophy was bold. He believed that European elegance and handling could be combined with American reliability and raw power. Think about it. In the 1960s, Ferrari engines were magnificent, but they were temperamental, expensive to maintain, and required constant care. Rivolta saw an opportunity. Why not take proven, mass-produced Chevrolet V8s, engines with mountains of torque and unmatched dependability, and place them inside beautifully engineered Italian chassis, topped with coach-built bodywork from the best design houses in the world? To bring this vision to life, Rivolta assembled an absolute dream team. On the engineering side, he enlisted Giotto Bizzarini, a man with a chip on his shoulder. Bizzarini had worked for Ferrari, where he played a critical role in developing the legendary 250 GTO. But after clashing with Enzo Ferrari during what became known as the Ferrari walkout of 1961, he left the company with something to prove. The Iso project gave him the perfect chance for revenge, building a GT that could outrun and outshine his former employer. And for the styling, Rivolta turned to none other than Giorgetto Giugiaro, then working at Bertone. Giugiaro was already a rising star, known for his ability to blend aggression with elegance, precision with emotion. His pencil created a shape that was at once sleek and muscular, a low, predatory coupe that looked ready to pounce. The Grifo's lines were clean and purposeful, yet undeniably exotic. It had the drama of a supercar, but the refinement of a luxury grand tourer. From the beginning, the Iso Grifo was intended for a very specific kind of buyer. This wasn't a car for the masses. It was built for wealthy enthusiasts who wanted exclusivity, sophistication, and speed. People who admired Ferraris but maybe wanted something more usable, more reliable, and perhaps even more rebellious. The Grifo's blend of Italian craftsmanship and American muscle made it an outsider in the best way possible. But the project was not without its challenges. The Chevrolet V8s, especially the big block 427s, were brutally powerful but also heavy. To make the car handle like a proper European GT, Bizzarini had to completely rethink suspension geometry, weight distribution, and chassis stiffness. Cooling was another issue. Big engines generate big heat, and in the confined space of a low-slung Italian coupe, keeping temperatures under control required clever engineering.
And then there was the business side. Iso was a tiny company compared to Ferrari or Maserati. Building cars by hand in small numbers meant high costs, and without the racing pedigree of Ferrari, convincing buyers to choose a Grifo was a challenge. Still, Rivolta believed that offering something different, Italian style with American muscle, was enough to carve out a niche. By 1970, the Iso Grifo evolved into the Series II, and this is where our 1971 model comes in. The most visible change was the adoption of hideaway headlights, giving the front end a sharper, more modern look. It was as if the Grifo had matured. No longer just a pretty coupe, but a predator hiding in plain sight. Underneath, improvements were made to handle the even larger V8 engines, including the monstrous 7-liter Chevrolet 427. The Series II wasn't just a facelift, it was a statement. It told the world that Iso wasn't playing around. This was a car that could sit in the same conversation as the Ferrari Daytona, the Maserati Givi, or even Lamborghini's Miura. And in some ways, it was even bolder, because it wasn't afraid to embrace its hybrid DNA. Italian on the outside, American at heart. The Iso Grifo, especially the Series II, symbolized an era when car makers dared to take risks. It wasn't about playing safe. It was about creating something unforgettable. And in 1971, that's exactly what Iso achieved. If the Iso Grifo Series II is a legend today, it's not just because of its story, it's because of the machine itself. Under that long sculpted hood and beneath its Italian curves lies a fascinating blend of engineering choices that made it one of the most unique Grand Tourers of its era. At the heart of the Iso Grifo Series II was power, raw, unfiltered American power. Most cars were fitted with the Chevrolet 427 cubic inch V8, a 7.0-liter big block engine that, even in factory trim, produced close to 390 horsepower. Some were later upgraded to the 454, pushing displacement even further. And because Iso was building in small numbers, each car could be tailored. Customers could choose different engines depending on how much brute force they wanted under their right foot. The choice of an American V8 wasn't just about power. It was also about reliability and availability. A Ferrari V12 might sing at high revs, but it demanded constant care. The Chevrolet V8s were workhorses, proven in everything from Corvettes to race cars. Owners of the Iso Grifo could drive across Europe, and if something went wrong, a good mechanic with Chevrolet parts could keep them going. That practicality made the Grifo stand out in the rarefied world of exotic GTs. But power alone doesn't make a car great, it's how you use it. Giotto Bizzarrini's chassis design ensured the Grifo could handle its massive engines. Up front, it used a double wishbone suspension with coil springs, giving precision and control. At the rear, a D-Dion setup with a Watt linkage offered the best of both worlds, the stability of a solid axle with the handling refinement of independent suspension. This was advanced thinking for the late 60s and early 70s, and it gave the Grifo road manners that surprised people.
Stopping power was equally important. With nearly 400 horsepower under the hood, Iso fitted the Grifo with four-wheel disc brakes, servo-assisted, strong, and reliable. In an era when some cars of similar performance still relied on drums in the rear, the Grifo was ahead of the curve. Steering was rack and pinion, lightened by power assistance, making the car easier to control despite the weight of that big V8 sitting over the front axle. Speaking of weight, the Grifo is no featherweight. Depending on the engine, it tipped the scales at around 1,600 kilos, give or take. But the way it carried that weight was key. The long wheelbase of 2.5 meters gave it stability at high speeds, while the low height of just 1.2 meters kept the center of gravity down. That combination made it a true Grand Tourer, stable at 250 kilometers per hour on the autostrada, yet comfortable enough for long-distance cruising. And let's not forget performance. In its most powerful forms, especially with the 7-liter 7-litri setup, the Iso Grifo Series II could push close to 300 kilometers per hour. That was Ferrari Daytona territory. The Daytona was one of the fastest road cars in the world at the time, and here was a rival, powered by an American big block, keeping up on the open road. Acceleration figures varied depending on the engine and gearbox, but sub-6-second runs to 100 kilometers per hour were within reach.
Transmission options added to the character. Most enthusiasts lust after the ZF 5-speed manual, which gave the Grifo a racing car feel with crisp shifts and ratios that made the most of the V8's torque. Others came with Borg-Warner 4-speeds and a handful with GM 3-speed automatics. The automatics were rare, and today they're fascinating collector pieces. But for pure driving pleasure, the manual cars are the crown jewels. And then there's the design, because the mechanical package was only part of the story. Giugiaro's work at Bertone gave the Series II a more aggressive, modern look compared to the Series I. The big change was the hideaway headlights, which not only cleaned up the front fascia, but gave the car a menacing, almost shark-like expression. The proportions were perfect, a hood long enough to fit the biggest V8 GM could offer, a cabin pushed far back, and a short, muscular rear. It had the presence of a supercar, but the usability of a GT. Inside, the Grifo balanced luxury with sportiness. Leather upholstery, high-quality materials, and a driver-focused cockpit reminded you that this was an Italian hand-built machine, not a mass-produced American muscle car. But unlike a Ferrari, which sometimes sacrificed comfort for performance, the Iso Grifo was designed to be lived with. This was a car you could take across the continent in style, all while knowing you had muscle car power on tap whenever the road opened up. And of course, numbers matter, because rarity adds to the legend. Only about 83 Iso Grifo Series II cars were ever built, and within that, the 7-liter versions are the most sought after. Fewer than 25 were fitted with the ZF 5-speed manual. And if you're talking about unicorns, the Targa versions, with removable roof panels, were produced in just a handful of units. That level of rarity means that each surviving Grifo Series II is a unique artifact of automotive history.
The Iso Grifo Series II wasn't just another Italian coupe, it was a carefully engineered blend of opposites: American brawn and Italian artistry, brute force and elegant control. It was the kind of car that proved that different could also mean extraordinary. And to this day, when you hear the rumble of that Chevy big block inside a Bertone masterpiece, you realize Iso had created something truly timeless. When the Iso Grifo Series II hit the streets in 1970 and 1971, it immediately caught attention. Journalists and enthusiasts alike couldn't ignore its presence. That low stance, those hidden headlights, the long hood stretched out in front of the driver. It looked every bit the rival of Ferrari and Maserati. And when you fired up the Chevrolet V8, it sounded more like a muscle car from across the Atlantic than a delicate Italian thoroughbred. That dual personality was both its charm and its curse. The press of the time admired the Iso Grifo for its styling and performance. Here was a grand tourer that could sit proudly next to a Ferrari Daytona, yet offered a very different experience. The Daytona's V12 screamed at high revs, while the Grifo's 427 big block thundered with raw torque. Some loved that contrast. The idea of Italian design with American power felt fresh and rebellious. Others criticized it, saying the big engines made the car too heavy, sacrificing finesse for brute force. And then there was the price. The Iso Grifo was expensive, sometimes as costly as a Ferrari. That limited its appeal to a very small circle of buyers. Iso didn't have the racing pedigree of Ferrari or Maserati either, which meant fewer wealthy clients were willing to take a chance on a relatively unknown brand. Still, the exclusivity worked in its favor. Owning a Grifo in 1971 meant you weren't just another Ferrari or Lamborghini owner. You had something different, something that stood out even in the most glamorous company. But then came the oil crisis of 1973. Suddenly, big block V8s looked irresponsible, even dangerous to your wallet. Fuel prices soared, governments introduced restrictions, and the appetite for cars that guzzled fuel at supercar rates all but disappeared. By 1974, Iso was in financial trouble, and the Grifo's production quietly ended. Only about 413 Iso Grifos were ever built across all years, and of those, only around 83 were Series II models. Production numbers that small meant the Grifo never had a chance to break into the mainstream, but it also meant that every surviving example would one day be incredibly valuable. Fast forward to today, and the Iso Grifo Series II is nothing less than a holy grail for collectors. Enthusiasts now see what many in the 1970s overlooked: the genius of blending Italian design and engineering with the might of American muscle. It's a car that represents both elegance and rebellion, exclusivity and power. And because so few were made, every car that comes to market draws global attention.
Auction houses like RM Sotheby's and Bonhams have seen Iso Grifos fetch astronomical sums. Well-preserved or fully restored Series II cars regularly sell for more than $500,000. One particularly rare 1971 7-liter Series II with the 7-liter Chevrolet Big Block and a manual 5-speed gearbox sold for around $610,000. Depending on condition, originality, and rarity, values range from the high $300,000s to well over $600,000. And if you're talking about a Targa version or a car with unique history, the price can climb even higher. Part of the reason for that value is just how few remain. Many Iso Grifos were lost to rust, accidents, or neglect. Some were modified with non-original parts, which hurts their collectability. Today, finding a Series II that still has its original drivetrain, interior, and bodywork is like striking gold. Collectors pay a premium for documented history, the kind of paperwork that proves a car's provenance and originality.
For anyone dreaming of owning one today, the advice is clear. Buy the best example you can find and make sure it's authentic. Restorations can cost a fortune, and parts for the unique chassis and body are incredibly hard to come by. The good news is that the Chevrolet V8s are straightforward to maintain. But everything else, the De Dion suspension, the Bertone bodywork, the hand-built interior, requires specialists and deep pockets. This isn't a car for casual ownership. It's a car for the committed enthusiast who wants a centerpiece in their collection. And how is the Iso Grifo remembered among enthusiasts? As a rebel, as an outsider, as a car that didn't follow the rules of Italian supercars, yet somehow created its own legacy. It didn't have Ferrari's racing pedigree. It didn't have Lamborghini's flamboyance. What it had was character, a bold vision that dared to mix two automotive cultures into one unforgettable package. That's why, at concourse events and classic car gatherings today, the Iso Grifo Series II always draws a crowd. People stop, stare, and smile. They know they're looking at something truly special, one of fewer than 100 cars built, representing a lost chapter in Italian automotive history. The Iso Grifo may have been misunderstood in its own time, but half a century later, its reputation has only grown. For the world's most passionate car lovers, it's not just a grand tour, it's a statement, a symbol of an era when bold ideas and fearless engineering gave us machines that are still breathtaking today.
The Iso Grifo Series II by Bertone is proof that classic cars are more than just machines. They're stories on wheels, blending passion, design, and raw performance in ways we rarely see today. This grand tourer, with its Italian curves and American V8 heart, still sparks excitement in the world of vintage automobiles, even more than 50 years later. If this masterpiece has captured your imagination, here's your chance to keep that passion alive. Hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and join our community of enthusiasts who live and breathe classic cars. By liking and sharing this video, you help keep legends like the Iso Grifo alive for new generations of car lovers. And I want to hear from you. What do you think of the Iso Grifo Series II? Is it the perfect blend of Italian elegance and American muscle, or would you take a Ferrari Diana or a Maserati Ghibli instead? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let me know which classic car you'd like to see featured in the next video. Together, we're building a space where the spirit of vintage grand tourers, rare exotics, and timeless icons will never fade. So stick around, the road ahead is full of legends waiting to be told.